Hello, and welcome back to a brand new season of The Positive Perspective. We did it. We made it through another end of year sprint, another holiday blur, another moment where time somehow both flew and dragged by at the same time. And now here we are. New year, new goals, new you. If you're new here, my name is Kirstin Turner, and today I want to talk to you about goals, but not in the way that most people do, not in the hype you up, write it down once, forget about it. And what I really want is something that's actually going to stick for us for the whole year, not just a few months in, because we all know what usually happens. January, we're all excited, feels electric. February feels sometimes a little bit more familiar. And there's a quote I love that explains goals in a different light. And basically, it goes, most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10. And if you sit with that for a second, you'll see that this sentence explains why so many people feel disappointed with themselves when the real issue isn't effort or discipline. It's really a lack of clarity, vision, or purpose. So imagine just getting in your car, opening your GPS, and typing in somewhere better. No street, no city, no destination, no timeline. Your GPS would just freeze. And if it did anything at all, it would probably send you back to places you already know. Your brain works exactly the same way. Your brain's number one job isn't happiness or success, although that would be nice. It's energy efficiency. So when the destination is unclear, your brain defaults to familiar patterns because they cost less energy, even if those patterns stress you out. So when people say, I don't know why I fell off, it isn't because they're weak or lazy. It's our biology. And they don't fall off because they don't want it badly enough. They do. They fall off because they're trying to build a new future on top of an old operating system. So let me explain that a little bit more. So most goals are set on top of patterns that we've never really questioned or looked at. And so we can set up all of these goals however much we want. If, however, your habits haven't changed and you're not clear on why you're doing the things you are, you're just going to fall back to those things. And so that's a lot of the reason why that happens. So today we're going to talk about how to create clarity that actually sticks, clarity that drives action, results, and less pressure all at the same time. And to do that, I want to borrow a framework from Tony Robbins because it really sort of helps outline it in a very easy way to look at and to remember. So it's called the 3 pillars of sustainable success. So he teaches that sustainable success comes down to these 3 pillars. And no, they aren't hustle, willpower, and push harder. They are, so the first pillar, so I'll just dive right in. The first pillar is absolute clarity. So these aren't vague goals, right? It's not, I want to be happier or I want more balance. These are like crystal clear outcomes tied to a compelling why. So here's something I see all the time. I'll ask someone, what do you want this year? And they'll say something along the lines of like less stress. So, okay, less stress than what? Less stress than last year, last month, someone else's life on Instagram. So your brain can't execute vague instructions. It needs coordinates. So a fun fact is that your brain is actually a prediction machine. So its job is to conserve energy and keep you safe. When the destination is unclear, it's going to default to what's familiar, saves energy, and it's safe. So clarity isn't just motivating, it's calming because you're clear on where you want to go and why. So Harvard research shows that the brain is actually far more likely to take action when outcomes are specific, visual, and emotionally meaningful, not logical. So your brain doesn't move for spreadsheets. And yes, it may because there's certain numbers and specifics there, and especially if it's around money, but there's actually always a deeper why there, which we'll get into in a second. But it moves for pictures, for a vision. And so this is exactly why visualization is so powerful. If you're not familiar with visualization, it's simply the practice of mentally rehearsing an experience before it happens. So it's not in this like wishful way, but it's in a detailed sensory way. So what do you see, feel, hear, and even say to yourself? So here's where it gets a little bit more interesting. Elite athletes have been using visualization for decades. One of the most famous examples is Michael Phelps. I remember when I worked at Under Armour and Phelps became one of our athlete partners. So one of the stories he shared was that he didn't just train in the pool, he trained in his head. Every single day, he visualized races from start to finish, the dive, the strokes, the turns, the finish. He even visualized things going wrong. And there's a famous moment in the Olympics where his goggles actually filled with water mid race. He couldn't see a thing and still won gold. When they asked him how, he said he'd already swum that race 1,000 times in his head. That's not motivation, that's neural rehearsal. So your brain doesn't fully distinguish between something vividly imagined and something actually experienced. When you visualize, you activate many of the same neural pathways as if you were physically doing the thing. So when people say, I just need to be more disciplined, what they actually really need is often a clearer mental picture of where they want to go and how they want to do it. And a key there too is the feeling that goes along with it, the feeling with the achievement. So because your brain doesn't move toward abstract outcomes like, I need more success or I need more balance, it moves toward images it recognizes and feels safe executing. So this is why vision matters more than just goals that we will throw up that we want. Goals tell you what you want. Visualization trains your brain how to get there, and vision really helps you with your why. So when your brain has already been there, action feels familiar instead of scary. So I think it would be fun to do a visualization exercise together. So let's do one, but I'll save it for later in this episode. So really what I want you to take away here is that clarity creates momentum. Vague goals create an environment for hesitation. Pillar 2. So that was the first pillar. Pillar 2 is world-class strategy and coaching. Tony always says every elite performer has a coach. If information alone created success, we'd all be calm, fit, fulfilled, and sleeping 8 hours at night. But knowing what to do isn't the same as integrating it. And we all kind of know what to do, at least to a certain extent, right? The reason coaching works isn't information, it's pattern interruption. So it's being able to see things differently. It's being able to understand ourselves differently, to look at a new map of the world. It's someone saying, hey, that thing you think is discipline is actually fear. And that's hard to see from inside your own head. You don't need to figure everything out the hard way. Coaching helps you see patterns you hadn't noticed and someone is cheering for you while also holding you accountable. You can't read the label from inside the jar. The third pillar is identity and belief rewiring. So this is the pillar that most people skip. And it's the reason goals quietly die. If your identity conflicts with your goals, the goals lose every time. You can want to slow down, but if your identity is, I'm only valuable when I'm productive, rest is going to feel unsafe. And you can want growth, but if success is subconsciously tied to pressure, responsibility, or losing connection, maybe because you get so busy you can't talk or see the people that you love, your nervous system is going to hit the brakes. And a lot of time we can't see these. These are subconscious things. So until you spend the time to dig around and pull these things out, they'll constantly run the show. And I've worked with people who set goals to slow down, but their identity was, let's just say, the reliable one. And so slowing down felt like they would be letting people down. So they constantly had to be moving in order to feel like they were doing, whether they were or not, right? So they'd hit the goal or then they'd unconsciously recreate chaos because that's what they needed to keep doing and keep being, right? So your nervous system's always going to protect identity over achievement, over your goals. And human needs psychology plays a point in this, but I'll save that again for another podcast episode. Your goals don't fail, they get vetoed. And that's by other things running the show in your body, right? Lasting change happens when who you're becoming matches what you're building. Okay, ready to try that visualization exercise? If you're driving, obviously keep your eyes open. If you're somewhere safe, you can close them. But either way, just listen in. So picture yourself 1 year from now, not 10, not 5, just 1. You've been consistent, not perfect, consistent. Notice where you are. What does a normal day look like? How do you start your morning? Pay attention to how you feel in your body. Is there more calm, more confidence, more space? Now zoom in on one moment in that day where you think, yeah, this feels really good. What are you doing? Who are you with? What are you no longer rushing or proving? Now, here's a part that I really want you to focus in on. Look at you. Look at yourself. How are you carrying yourself? What are you wearing? What boundaries feel natural now? What thoughts come up automatically when something stressful happens? I want you to take that version of you, the posture, the mindset, the way you respond, and mentally bring it back to today. And that's the bridge. So, visualization isn't about escaping the present, it's about teaching your brain what it's safe to move toward. And if any of that felt uncomfortable or blurry or you struggle to picture it, it could be because I'm rushing through it in a podcast episode. Obviously, if you're visualizing on your own or with a coach, there's more time and space and you have time to think about it. But anyways, it also could just mean that you need clarity. And that's the work for you to do. So, identifying what you want is powerful and obviously extremely liberating. And honestly, you might be surprised how many people have absolutely no idea what they want out of life, which leads them not choosing but reacting, right? So if you've identified your point B, amazing. You've got a destination. But now we need to go that one step further. And why do you want that? Because if you don't understand the why, you'll keep running into invisible blocks. Things like fear, procrastination, self sabotage, emotional resistance. And we can't change something we can't see. And if you don't understand why you want something, it's not going to feel fulfilling when you get it. I've seen people hit goals they chased for years and immediately ask, why do I still feel empty? So the minute they get the thing, there's an expectation of how they're going to feel, and they don't feel that way. And that is a very identity shaking thing because the thing you thought was going to deliver what you've wanted didn't deliver that. And so now it's very confusing. And it's because achievement without alignment is exhausting. So obviously could go into more detail there, but I'd rather run into our exercise. So let's go into our exercise. So something super simple but incredibly powerful is to ask yourself why 7 times. So let's say the goal is I want to make $200,000 this year. Why? Why does this matter? Why now? Why is this important to you? Why would it hurt not to do it? Somewhere around why number 5 or 6, the logic answers start to fall away and identity shows up. So your first why is usually strategy, right? It's the thinking mind. Your 7th why is usually more the truth. So you're getting to that underlying details of why. So once you hit that deeper why, you can start to ask yourself things like, who am I as a person in that future? How do I think differently? What boundaries do I hold without guilt? How do people describe me? And what habits do I have that are automatic? So notice that these are all they're not achievement questions. These are all identity questions. And this is because you don't rise to the level of your goals, you drift back to the level of your identity. So what we want to do is increase your base identity level, right? So I created a free values resource because I believe values are really sort of like invisible fingerprints that constantly guide us. And what they'll basically explain, if you're clear on what yours are, that why some goals energize you, why others drain you, why certain situations trigger you, and so I've found that once people identify their values, I watch their decisions get easier almost overnight. And this isn't because life gets easier, but it's because these internal conflict, these different things that will come up, it actually just decreases. There isn't this second thought that's trying to rationalize why they are the way they are or acted the way that they did. They can look at their values and go, oh, yeah, that's about right. That makes sense why I made that decision or why I'm feeling that way. They understand themselves and then they can accept who they are. So, not to say you can't change your values or characteristics and how you show up, you most certainly can. But if you know your values, you understand them, and let's say you've looked at them and then chosen them back, being like, yeah, I wouldn't change those. Those are my values, right? You understand the calls you make and the feelings that you have. So, you ultimately cut out a lot of mental noise that wastes energy and time. You'll also find you have easier, well, at least what I've seen is an easier time setting boundaries. You don't hesitate on things, so you move quicker. You know who you are and you know why you make the decisions that you do. So, what I really want you to remember is that the more you understand yourself, the faster you can close the gap on your goals because you're not just working harder, you're removing the invisible friction that slows most people down to achieving everything that they're wanting to achieve. The people who push the hardest may be successful in their own right, but they most certainly aren't always the happiest. Jim Carrey once famously said, "I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see that it's not the answer." And I think what this quote is really saying is that everybody has this picture of success. I mean, we think that if we have that thing, that we'll have all, like everything that we want. And he's basically just saying that thing that you may think is the big shiny thing, is not necessarily that. And how we get ahead of that is to really understand ourselves and then really be honest with what it is that we want and then why we want that. And the happiest people I've found don't fight who they are. They take time to understand themselves and they start building from there. You don't need more motivation this year. As we've seen many times, motivation doesn't always last. You need more clarity. And clarity doesn't just tell you what you want, it reveals who you are, why you are the way you are, and what's been in your way. So, in the next episodes, we're going to talk about human needs psychology, identity shifts, self sabotage that doesn't look like sabotage, and how to build momentum without burning yourself out. So success just isn't about pushing harder. It's about getting clearer on what you want, clear on why you want it, clearer on what actions actually move the needle, clearer on how to create daily happiness in your own life. So thanks so much for being here. I'll drop the link to the values resource in the description. And as always, keep choosing the positive perspective.